I was going to say that when you lifted up your microphone, I was like, I don't know anything about you yet. And I know that was a recommendation, but that looks like the microphone a 7 would get. Like, if it's got to be the only colorful microphone on the market. Mm-hmm. It's like gray, silver.
Thank you.
And I have been searching.
Welcome to Following the Fire. Thanks for joining us on this journey through the wilderness. Just like Israel followed the pillar of fire and smoke, we want to take a new look at our beliefs and just follow him.
And like Israel, we get it wrong a lot, we get lost a lot, but we're doing our best to go where God leads us. I'm Nathan.
And I'm Steve.
Don't you know it's all I have? But even on my heart can't compare with what you're...
All right, welcome everyone to Following the Fire. Today we're gonna, so this one time I was in a cafe, and usually what I do is I'll order a drink, and I'll just walk through the cafe and like listen to what people are saying, and I'll sit down next to the group of people with the most interesting conversation going on, and I'll just pretend like I'm reading and just like engage passively in their conversation the whole time and judge them, basically. So this one time I was sitting in a cafe, and there was this like girl, maybe in college, and then this middle-aged woman, and the girl was like, yeah, so my friend's like a 4, but I'm more like a 7. And I was like, you think your friend is ugly? I thought she was doing like the, like 0 to 10 attractiveness scale. So she was talking about her friends, like, yeah. And I even have a friend that's a 3. I was like, oh man, that's kind of harsh. But then the more they were talking, then I realized, like, I think that these people are in a cult. Because she was like, I'm a 7, but then I, integrate into my something else. And I was like, what in the world is going on? It turns out I was listening to a conversation about the Enneagram. And so today we're going to... Yeah. It was so confusing. And so there's probably a lot of people out there who have heard of Enneagram or maybe who heard a weird conversation like that. So if you were like me and you are confused about what the Enneagram is like, or if you're like more recent me and you have used the Enneagram but you want to learn more, I think our guest is going to really help you out. We're here with Krista Cannon. She knows a lot about the Enneagram. Krista, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I'm going to talk about. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Krista, and I am a 2-time certified life coach, and I use the Enneagram in my life coaching. And so I'm also certified as an Enneagram coach as well. And the Enneagram, for me, the reason why I wanted to come on and talk to you guys about it today is because it's been one of the most powerful tools in my spiritual transformation. And a lot of people don't really think of the Enneagram as a spiritual transformation type tool. We think of it as more of a personality test, right? But really, it's actually a tool that takes you on a really amazing spiritual transformation.
That's cool. Yeah, I don't often hear people talking about the Enneagram as a spiritual anything at all. It's like, okay, I'm tired of the Myers-Briggs. Let's do something different. This one's not colors, it's numbers.
Yeah, exactly. So the Enneagram is actually an ancient tool, and we kind of co-opted it into this personality typing tool. So it actually wasn't the Enneagram of personality until about like the 1950s-ish. And so really, we use it in this way as a way to help us understand ourselves and help us understand the world. But it's actually a much more powerful tool than just the 9 numbers that you see on the Enneagram. And so it's kind of hard for me sometimes because the way a lot of people learn about the Enneagram is through memes on Instagram, right? That may be how some of you guys were introduced to it, is you found this meme and you were like, oh, like that describes me, right? And then you kind of go down this rabbit hole of figuring out what your number is or like what sounds like you. And then you start to send all these funny memes to your friends. But that kind of is really the the very most basic version. And I don't want to put memes down because it is a way that people can get introduced to the Enneagram, which is great. And I want everyone to be introduced to it. But it's just the most like watered down version of the Enneagram. The Enneagram is actually a super powerful tool that we start with the psychology, right? We start with figuring out what your number is, just like with Myers-Briggs or that sort of thing. But really it takes you on this beautiful journey of self-transformation. And for me, it was a really beautiful spiritual journey.
So before we get, I'd really love to hear about your journey with this and how you discovered it. But since we are kind of a faith podcast, I just wanted to say, isn't witchcraft against the Bible?
Oh.
I'm a little bit nervous with this Enneagram stuff. Could you tell us, just like for the uninitiated to the occult?
Great, getting in there with a question.
What could you just tell us a little bit about what is the Enneagram?
Well, it definitely looks like a occult symbol. It looks like a pentagram if you look at it. And you know, it's really interesting because it is quite controversial in the Christian world. At first, white evangelical Christianity sort of co-opted the Enneagram, and they were like, oh my gosh, look at this cool tool. We're going to do this and we're going to like put it in all of our churches. And more recently, there's been kind of a drawback on that where there's been a lot of people coming out saying the Enneagram is not Christian, actually, and that we shouldn't be listening to it. But for me personally, and for a lot of people that I know that have used this tool, it has actually been a tool that has helped deepen their faith and bring them closer to God and closer to others. Which, you know, as we know in the Bible, our top 2 commandments are to love God and love others. So if you are a Christian and you're kind of questioning whether the Enneagram is something you should follow or not, in my opinion, it is something that supports both of those 2 commandments fully.
Well, it's not something that you follow, is it? It's more of like a kind of something to kind of guide you in a direction a little bit.
Right. And any teacher of the Enneagram would never say that it's definitely not a cult. We'll just put that out there.
That's exact. If you are having to say it's definitely not a cult, then, you know, I feel like the people who say aren't cults, but I'm a big fan of the.
You can definitely trust me. Okay.
Yeah. Trust me. I am not about to kidnap you. There really are marshmallows in my van. I'm a big fan of the Enneagram. And it has been really useful in my spiritual development, and even the kind of funny story about how I convinced my wife to start talking to me again involved lots of introspective Enneagram work.
Really?
Oh yeah, I had to do a lot of work and used every tool in my tool belt that I could find. So why is it called Enneagram?
Well, it's called the Enneagram because of the 9 points that you see. It's like really hard when you don't have a symbol in front of you. So everybody listening, go pull up an Enneagram symbol right now. And so it's called.
I'll put a link in the show notes.
Yeah, awesome. And so it's called the Enneagram because of the 9 points that are on the symbol. And if you want to dive deeper into the symbol, it's actually made up of a bunch of different symbols that stand for different things that are also kind of controversial, right? Like the law of 3 is throughout the Enneagram because there's each of the numbers is within what is called a center. And so there's 3 numbers in each center. And that means something. And then there's things called tri-types. And there's we can get really, really deep into Enneagram, what do you call it? Enneagram theory. And there's actually lots of different theories about the Enneagram too. Like some teachers teach it a certain way and some teachers teach it another way. Some teachers don't even use the numbers on the Enneagram. They only use your center. And so they will just only teach from the center. And that's like the main thing that you need to work on and heal and work with. And so you don't even necessarily need to know your number in order to have a huge effect from it.
So, I mean, I'm not as familiar with the Enneagram as Nathan is, and obviously as you. Can you tell especially for our listeners who have zero concept of what you're talking about, can you just like very basic 101, what is this, and is it a test you take? Is it something you figure out? That kind of thing.
Yeah. So the Enneagram is a psychological tool that teaches us about human motivation. And so every other tool that you see out there, Myers-Briggs and DISC and all those different kinds of tools, they're all about human behavior. And so they're going to tell you the behaviors that you do, right? So I'm an ENFP, right? So I'm an extrovert. And so these are the behaviors that you can expect from an extrovert, right? That's a Myers-Briggs. But from the Enneagram, what's interesting is that it teaches you about your motivation. It teaches you why you do the things you do, not how you do them or the things that you do. And this is really significant because a lot of people can behave in similar ways, but when you learn why it is that you're behaving in that way. So for example, I'm an Enneagram 7, right? And 7s are very much seen as like the life of the party. They love to have fun. They love to travel. They love adventure. They love to try new things. They love to meet new people. Like they're just very much like always seeking out something new, something exciting, something that will interest them. And there's things that a lot of things don't keep their interest for very long, right? But the actual core motivation of the 7 is trying to avoid pain. And so it looks like the 7 is healthy and happy and doing all these things and creating these experiences. And in reality, it's actually a coping mechanism for avoiding sitting with pain in their life. And so when you can start to understand these motivations, it becomes very powerful to really understand why you are the way you are. And what the Enneagram really teaches us is the box that we're in, and then it gives us the choice to step outside of that box if we want to and make a different choice. And the other thing the Enneagram teaches us is the gift that we have to offer this world. So one of the theories of the Enneagram is that we are a divine spark. And when we come into this world, we have a gift to offer the world. And each of the types has a different gift. And then what happens over time, whether it's through nature or through nurture, the ego starts to develop. And the ego is like a fake version of the gift. And so we have this beautiful gift that we're meant to offer the world. And then the ego develops and we start to offer it in a fake way, in a way that we think that we're doing it, but it's not really what we're doing. We're not really doing it that way. And it can become very unhealthy. It can become toxic. It can become really stressful. And so the Enneagram teaches us what we're doing in our ego. Like, what does our ego look like? How to relax that ego so that we can start to return back to our true essence. So you can see where the spirituality comes in here, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
I like you talked about an Enneagram 7, and the meme version of an Enneagram 7 is I like to have fun. I like variety. And so it can be easy to say like, well, I like to have fun. I like people. I like experiences, and to say, oh, I must be a 7, or like even like I kind of want to be a 7, but it's what I liked about the Enneagram compared to, I just like learning stuff. So like Myers-Briggs, I like Myers-Briggs too, but Myers-Briggs just tells me kind of like, this is what you are. There it is. And Enneagram was like, here's some advice. here's some things you can do. Here's what is going to be hard for you. And even here are the lies that you're telling yourself, that if you can just kind of start to recognize those, like you said, you're being offered a fake gift. So you think that you're maybe chasing after security, but what you're doing is actually making it worse. So
yeah,
I definitely see that idea though of, maybe our strengths are often also our weaknesses. The things that we have in our personalities that can be such a blessing, in maybe our sinful state or in our fallen or ego state, then that's also like the problems that we have and the ways that we hurt each other.
Yeah. And well, in our ego state is when we are living the most in fear, right? Because we're not living in the confidence of who we are. And this is one of the places where it gets controversial in Christianity, because a lot of people feel like if you're seeking self, then you're not seeking God, right? And so if I'm seeking to learn more about myself, then I'm actually not seeking to learn more about God. And I think that's a misconception, because I believe that what I have learned about myself is the places where I resist God because I live in fear versus living in the trust and the love and the grace and all the things that are the gifts that God wants to give me, right? And so for me, learning more about myself is not a selfish act, right? It has been a way for me to deepen my faith and deepen my relationship with God, because it's a way that I have realized how fear shows up for me and how fear reigns in so many areas of my life and how I can relax that fear.
I'd always assumed that the Enneagram was just like another personality quiz thing.
Yeah.
It does seem like at work that it's my Christian friends who know the Enneagram, and it's my non-Christian friends who have never heard of it. So it's funny that there is a history of Christians using the Enneagram, but also it does seem like it has become more popular recently. But also, yeah, you mentioned controversy. I don't know that much about the controversy over the Enneagram. I haven't heard much of that, but it's interesting the subculture kind of that has found this tool, I guess.
Yeah, it was really popularized. Richard Rohr uses the Enneagram, and then Suzanne Stabile really popularized it as well. And then Ian Morgan Crone. And there was a book that came out called The Road Back to You. And then there was another book that came out called The Path Between Us. And so these were books that were basically helping people come back home to themselves. And that's one of the goals of the Enneagram, as we talk about the essence, right? As we talk about the essence, is for us to come back home to who we were truly meant to be, not this like fake version of ourselves that we've created because we think we're supposed to be a certain way. And Suzanne Stabile, her husband is a preacher in Dallas, right? So she's very well known in the Christian community. And so I think she's one of the people who really brought it to Christianity. And one of the controversies around it, which I would love to hear y'all's opinion on this, is one of the controversies around it is that it's said that the Enneagram was received through automatic writings. And I don't know the validity of that for sure or not, but I think to me, that's a very interesting thing to be upset about, especially for people that believe in the Bible, because I believe the Bible was also received through automatic writings. But I would love to hear y'all's opinion on that or thoughts on that.
I tend to be pretty pragmatic. I mean, I don't really care how it got here. If it makes sense and if it's helping people and it helps you, figure things out, then it works for me,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. My introduction to the Enneagram was The Road Back to You. And so it is very difficult to get people to agree on what the history of the Enneagram is.
That's true.
So if you, depending on your source, you will get wildly different histories, how old it is, what religions use it or started it, how it got to us. I like my own. I want to say that in The Road Back to You, there's maybe a slight allusion to maybe a monastic tradition using this to help priests. I was like, I'll take that. That's good for me. I like that idea, and so it's a funny. I really wish I knew what is the answer to that question, because if you try to find the answer, you really will find a bunch of different histories.
A lot of different things, yeah. And it's said, the kind of legend of the Enneagram, I guess, is that when it originally was received, you could actually understand everything in the world through the Enneagram, through the symbol. That's without the personality piece of it, right? And so it was supposedly it was passed down through oral tradition for a long time. And it was kind of exclusive, right? It was like, oh, we can't share this with everyone, And so then over time it's, become what it is. And like, as Steve said, it's very powerful and it works well. And as long as it's something that works for you, then definitely use it. Oh, so Steve, I wanted to answer your question about how do you find your number, right?
Yeah.
Part of the process is a lot. So there are tools, there are typing tests that you can take, just like you can take a Myers-Briggs test. But the problem is these tests can't measure motivation. And so you are the only person that could ever know your number, and you're the only person that could ever know what your true motivations are. And so even seasoned, like Enneagram veterans who have studied this for their whole lives, they will never type you because, first of all, it's considered unethical to type someone. And they could never truly know what your motivation is. And this is why, for me, I believe that the Enneagram is an actual spiritual journey, because a lot of times people go through different numbers before they land on what their actual number is. And it's an important part because we do have all 9 numbers within us. And there's different pieces from each number that are potentially parts of us that need to be healed. And so it's possible that as you're going through these numbers, you need to have that number with you for that period of time in order to heal something within you until you get to what your actual essence number is.
So how did you how did you discover the Enneagram? What was your journey like?
So, well, I heard about it first, probably, I don't know, like in 2013-ish. And we were going to use it at work for a personality test at work, to like learn about your coworkers and all that. Right.
Yeah.
And it was very hard to understand. And I was just like, never mind, forget this. Like, I'm not even interested in this. But they say once the Enneagram gets you, it has you. And then like, it'll always come back up for you.
You keep talking about it like it's a cult. You're scaring people away.
The Holy Spirit works through the Enneagram to reach you.
That's the right wording. There you go.
When the Spirit moves you towards the Enneagram, the Spirit will continue to move you towards the Enneagram.
Yeah, I'll cut that other part out. Yeah.
Okay, good. Perfect.
Definitely not a cult.
It's definitely not a cult. And so then I was reintroduced to it through like memes and different things like that. And I actually have a friend who is a 5. And so for those of you that are 5s, you know that 5s don't typically, when they start to learn about something, they don't typically let it go, and they learn everything they possibly can about it. And so through her, I started learning a lot more about it, because my original process for figuring out my number was getting the book, The Road Back to You. And at the beginning of each chapter, there's like these statements that are like, if you are like this, then this is your number. And so I read through, there was a couple numbers I thought I was. And so then I read through those statements and I was like, yeah, I'm that. And then I was done. I didn't read the book. I didn't read anything else about it. I just read through the statements and I said, yeah, I'm good. And so the first number I thought I was a 3. And so I stayed at 3 for a while, but 3s are really motivated by the way other people see them. So they're kind of oftentimes they can be seen as shapeshifters, because they become whoever they need to be in order to be seen as successful in the eyes of whoever they're with, right? So they're really motivated by the way other people view them. And I had a lot of the same behaviors as a 3, right? They're very motivated. They're often like entrepreneurs. They're success focused. Like they're really driven. And they're kind of like the shining star. Like the joke is like, God said, let there be light. And then there was a 3. And so I identified with that a lot, right? And so so I identified with that a lot, but the motivation wasn't there for me. So then, as I was going through my journey, I started to really identify with a 1. And at the time, I was in a job that was just really not right for me. And I was really unhappy in that job. And a lot of the characteristics of the 1 were coming out, right? Like a lot of perfectionism, a lot of judgment. I was very judgmental of the people around me. I was angry a lot of the time with the people around me because nobody was doing anything right, in my opinion. And so I really identified with the 1. And then this friend, who is also a life coach, by the way, I was telling her, so 1s, they go to 7 in growth. And so I was telling her about oh yeah, I can definitely see where these times in my life, these were like growth periods, because these are things that I did that were very much in my 7. And like, this was a time that I was growing. And she was like, what if you're actually a 7 and right now you're in a period of stress, because 7s go to 1 in stress. And that kind of broke everything open for me, realizing how unhappy I was in a lot of areas of my life, not just work, but in other areas as well. And so that was my journey. That was my Enneagram number journey, which is why I think it's important to allow people to explore the numbers. And then one of the goals of the Enneagram is self-compassion. But then as you start to explore all of the Enneagram, you start to have compassion for all the numbers. And so it's compassion for self first, and then you start to learn compassion for others as well.
So to be clear, this is not one number is better than the other.
Definitely
or preferable
not.
than the other.
One of the questions I had pre-written down was, so I'm a 5, but some people are not. So what can they do to be more like me and less like them? But yeah, I do think the so you mentioned ones. Yeah, it is. So you alluded to a couple of things. So there's these 9 different types, 9 numbers, 1 through 9, and then the shape is kind of showing how they're connected to each other. And there's directions, right? So you said that you were stressed out, and that a 7, you said, goes to 1 in stress. And so that's what kind of makes the shape happen, is these little interconnected lines. Yeah.
Well, this is one theory. So some teachers don't teach the stress and growth numbers because they don't believe in them. So, but yeah, that is one theory and one way that I think you can find your number, because you are connected to other numbers. And so a lot of times you can understand what characteristics. So 7 goes to 5 in growth, actually. And so you can kind of start to understand different periods of your life and different things that you do. And, kind of Nathan, to your point about, I've integrated, and so now I'm showing these characteristics. Your number actually doesn't change over time. And the best way to figure out what your number is to look back as far as you can to childhood and figure out what was your motivation? How were you behaving then? And that's going to be your number then, but it's probably your unhealthy version of your number at that point.
Interesting.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. I mean, I've heard about the stress and the growth, kind of be moving toward a different number. But I've been going for the past couple of years. I've been going through massive stress for the past 2 years, and especially the past year. The world has been going through stress for the past couple of years.
Yeah.
So do you tend to move toward the stress number the whole time, or is it? How's that work?
Well, there's 2 theories on this, right? So yes, you can, when you're feeling stressed, you can show unhealthy characteristics of your stress number, right? So as a 7, my stress number is a 1. And so oftentimes when I get stressed, you'll see these very perfectionistic tendencies coming out of me, anxious perfectionist, right? Everything has to be done a very specific way and it's not good enough, and the unhealthy version of the 1. But there's also levels of self-mastery within your own number. And so typically we are kind of all at this like average level of self-mastery, right? And the goal is that we're kind of moving up. We're always, as we do our inner work, we're always moving up the ladder to higher self-mastery. And the theory is that it's kind of like a rubber band, right? And so as you start to move up, you start to move up the rungs a little bit, and you can't go back down as far as you were before. So even when you get stressed out, as you start to master your number more and more, you'll still stretch back down low to lower self-mastery, but it'll never be as low as when you first started. Does that make sense?
Interesting.
We're getting into some like deep Enneagram theory here, guys.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is a lot more complicated than I thought.
It's really fun. And this is like, we're still like scratching the surface here. So
it's definitely one of those that there are some things that are easy to, like the color wheel is easy to explain in a sentence.
yeah.
But the Enneagram is one of those that once you've maybe investigated it a little bit and read some and started to figure yourself out, it really will click and it makes sense. But it's really difficult to explain to just from scratch because there's so much going on. There's so much going on, and it's a lot of information very, very quick.
Yeah, for sure.
So how does this kind of moving into the faith side of things? You kind of alluded to it earlier, Krista, but so say I'm working on figuring out my number. How, and as I hone in on that, like you mentioned, like the process, how does that help me with my faith walk? How does it impact that? And maybe how can you use the Enneagram to help you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I think it is going to be different for everyone, right? Everybody's going to kind of explore it in the way that is right for them and the way that the Spirit leads them to explore it.
Well done.
Thank you. I'm fourth generation Church of Christ, you guys. I know the lingo. All right. So for me, and I know you guys asked me this before I came on here to kind of think about like, what did this mean for my faith journey? And like, what was kind of my spiritual journey? Because for me, the Enneagram was actually one of the tools that took me on, can I say deconstruction? On my deconstruction journey. And that is kind of scary for some people, right? Because it's kind of like, oh, I don't know if I want to pick up this thing that's going to help me to start to deconstruct. But for me, whenever I realized that I was a 7 and I finally got to that place, it was this realization that not that there wasn't anything wrong with me, but that the way that I am, like who I am at my core, is not inherently bad or wrong. And for me, that's not what I was always taught growing up in the faith community, right? We're taught that we are inherently bad, we're inherently sinful, and we have to kind of fight against that our entire lives. And to me, that brings up this sort of like inner battle, right? We're kind of always having this inner battle with ourselves. We're at war with ourselves constantly, of this feeling of like, I am bad, but I'm doing all these good things. And for me, I was doing all the good things, right? I was checking all the boxes. I was like the poster child for the Church of Christ growing up. I was an intern in college. I was a missionary when I got out of college. I was checking all the boxes, and I was still being told that I wasn't worthy and I wasn't good and I wasn't
enough.
Yeah, exactly. And that there were parts of me that were really bad. And when I found the Enneagram and I started to explore these parts of myself that were kind of spontaneous and rebellious and a little bit crazy and a little bit impulsive, right? It was this realization of that's not bad. That's actually a gift. This is actually a beautiful thing that you can offer to the world. And you don't have to be ashamed of it. And actually, if we believe what the Enneagram teaches us, it's actually a gift from God. Like this gift that I have, which the gift of the Enneagram 7 is potential. And so the Enneagram 7 can see potential in any person, in any situation, and they bring that potential out of people. And that's a beautiful thing. It's not a negative thing.
Wow.
And so for me, as you start to explore and you start to discover your number, that's my goal for people as they start to learn who they are, is realizing that you have this beautiful gift and you were meant to give it. And you're not meant to be ashamed of it. And how can you kind of stop this war within yourself and start to celebrate who God really made you to be?
I love that idea you're bringing out of, because I had the same thing where I had an idea in my mind of like what my life would look like if I had less sin in it, or if I did things better, or did it enough, or whatever that was. And my idea that I had formed on accident was that if we all did the right things, we would basically all be doing the same thing, right? So as the Spirit increased in us, our unity would make us look uniform. But like C.S. Lewis in The Great Divorce and other places, what he talks about is the more you are like Christ, the more you are filled with the Spirit, the more you are like you, like your true you. Yes. And the more you blossom into not like an automaton, but actually just some unique kind of creature that is different from the next one. And that's certainly part of, kind of that journey in the Enneagram is, my joke about why can't everyone be a 5, or I want to be a 1 or an 8. But instead, I'm a me, and maybe I shouldn't try to like force myself into some other mold, but maybe I can figure out how to work with this one, in the right direction. So
yeah,
that's really cool.
And if you realize that we need all types, right? We need every type brings a certain gift to us that we need. And for me, self-exploration, it's always been really interesting because, like I said earlier, in the Christian church, it's always kind of seen as negative, right? Like, oh, you're seeking self, you're not seeking God. But to me, we are taught that we're all made in the image of God, right? And so wouldn't self-exploration actually be a way for us to understand God on a deeper level? Because I have something of God within me, right? I am made in the image of God. And so if that's true, and then I start to learn about myself, and then I also start to learn about the other types, then that's a way for me to just completely connect with God on a deeper level and understand the creativity of God and understand the uniqueness of God, right? Like God made us all a certain way for a reason. Not to be uniform, to your point. And to me, that's very exciting. Maybe that's a 7 thing, but it's very exciting to know that when you start down a path of inner work and self-exploration, you're actually getting to know God on a deeper level, and you're getting to understand his beauty and his creativity on a deeper level.
Yeah, I've been thinking recently about why people are so enamored with personality categorization in general. And I've been listening to this, there's a podcast called Science Diction.
Okay.
And it's part of like a Science Friday family of podcasts. And they've been doing a series about the rise of the Myers-Briggs and like where it came from, like who started it and all that kind of thing. And I haven't listened to the 3rd episode yet. It just came out yesterday, and I've just been thinking about like why are we so? I mean, I know myself, right? we think we know ourselves, but I think that we want to categorize ourselves because I think on a lot of levels we don't know why we do the things we do. Well, Paul says it, right? I don't know why I do the things I do, but I do it anyway. Maybe Paul needed the Enneagram.
Maybe.
I think that we have this drive. We know somewhere inside of us that that there's more to know about who we are and how we can connect with God.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing that kind of is exciting to me about this whole Enneagram thing is kind of a tool to help you kind of go in that direction a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Does it make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And if we want to go down a little bit of a science path here, they are proving that 98% of what we do is subconscious, right? Most of what we do is programming, and that programming happens between ages 1 and 7. So 98% of what you do, you learned before age 7. And so you learned it. And if you think about how young we start going to church and how young we start learning Old Testament stories and different things like that, right? It's very programmed into us. And I think it's really important for us to start saying, okay, what are these beliefs that I have? Why do I have them? Where did they come from? Are they serving me? Are they serving my fellow man? And that's a big thing that's been happening over the last year and a half, especially, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, Christians get scared of that because it feels like you're questioning the Bible or you're questioning God or you're questioning truth. But for me, it's like, well, if it's truth, it should always hold up. I could question it all day long and it's always going to hold up, right? And so I think it's really important because so much of what we do in our day-to-day is a set of beliefs that we don't even necessarily know that we hold. And when we start to do our inner work, we start to understand what those beliefs are and if we want to hold on to them or not, and if they are good for us or not, if they're helping us or not.
Right. Yeah, I totally get that. I feel like it's also a very Protestant Christian resistance to the self-diving thing.
Mm.
We don't want to be self-absorbed, and that there can be a problem with navel gazing, which I'm definitely guilty of.
Sure.
But I definitely tend to hurt people out of my blind spots.
Mm-hmm.
And the less healthy I am, or the less self-aware I am, the more I'm hurting people, and I don't even know it. And I always like the log and speck analogy from the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus does say, where should you start? What should your priority be? But he also, I always imagine myself just like knocking people over the head because I don't know there's a log sticking out of my eye.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many people that walk around and do that. And I do that as well. So that self-awareness is definitely can be a strong spiritual discipline, I think, that can not just to fall in love with myself and that's the end, but to understand. And in maybe like, I remember at the end of the book I was introduced to this practice called examine, which I think is a Catholic or Orthodox practice where all you do is at the end of the day, you think back to through your day without judging yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard for me as a evangelical to think throughout the day and not judge myself because I'll be like, well, I was far away from God and it's because I was doing this, or I lost my temper and it's because of this. But you just kind of relax and just like it's okay. That's what happened. That's who you were today. What's the pattern, or what's you really can learn a lot if part of your discipline is looking inward.
Yeah, and that's one of the things the Enneagram encourages is to not judge anything that you learn about yourself. It's all information, right? And then even as you start to explore and you start to notice these patterns and you start to notice these beliefs that are coming up, not passing judgment about them, because there's going to be some things that come up that you don't like and that you're thinking, man, why do I do that? And you'll start to notice it, and then you won't be able to not notice it. And so the Enneagram encourages you to, and the phrase that I love is just to commit to curiosity and to just get really curious with yourself and think, man, why do I do that? Why is this happening? Why did I act that way? Why did I do this? And oftentimes, one of the cool things about the Enneagram is it helps us to understand there may be something that you're doing that is not wrong or bad in itself, but the way that it lands with another person can feel bad or wrong to them because they receive things differently, right? 5s, for example, are withdrawn types. So whenever a 5 needs to process something, they don't want somebody like a 7 coming to them and saying, hey, tell me everything that's going on with you. What's happening? How are you? What's up? Tell me this. Tell me. The 5's like, leave me alone and let me go process, and then I'll come back and talk to you. And so it's not that the 7 is being caring. The 7 is saying, hey, I love you. I want to talk to you. I want to help you process this. I want to support you. And the 5 is not feeling supported at all because they need support by being able to go into their cave and shut the door and process. And so there's a lot of things that as we start to learn about ourselves and learn about others, we can truly love our neighbor because we can start to understand. And this is where, like in marriages, it becomes very important, right? Because a lot of, people will say, well, I'm doing this and I don't understand why they're not receiving this in this way. And then they're like, well, I don't know why I'm not receiving it in that way. It's just who I am. And so when you can start to have this language around, this is why I do what I do, and this is why this is important to me, it becomes really powerful in the way that we support each other and love each other and show compassion to each other.
I don't know what age I was when I discovered that not everybody thinks the same way I do, but it was old. It was recent. It was like, it took me a long time of really not understanding why people are reacting the way they are. I support people by leaving them alone. And that's not how anyone, wants to be supported. So it really does give you you can either use any tool, right, as a weapon or a tool.
Yeah. So
with my brother, I just use it purely as a weapon.
Obviously,
of course.
Yes.
But definitely, if you're using this as just a way to understand, like the people who you get along with the worst, that's where this is going to help the best.
Yeah.
Right? Even if you don't like slip an Enneagram pill into their coffee or however you join the cult, if you just read it and like on their behalf and kind of like try to figure out how you think that they might work, you really can start to, I've done this with people at work where like they're not reading the Enneagram books. But
so you unethically type them?
I type them unethically. Oh yeah. That's even how I like figured out like what the numbers were, was like a stereotype the people around me.
Sure. Great.
It's like, oh, that's one of those. But then
that's definitely what it's supposed to be used for.
Yeah. Then it helped me interact with them. I used it unethically for good. Is that chaotic good?
An end.
Yeah.
Well, I guess if they're feeling more supported and loved by you, then maybe we can let it slide.
Yeah. Maybe I wouldn't be able to, the certification board would unnumber me, take away my number.
Yeah, don't try to get certified by the IEA or anything like that.
No.
So by digging into the Enneagram, figuring out your number and your motivations, it helps you figure out your motivations, which then helps you figure out why you're doing what you're doing and how you interact with other people and how you interact with yourself and how you interact with God. Is that kind of how this all works?
Yeah. And then with each type, whenever you understand what your motivation is, there is a path, the path back to you, right? There's a path of growth for each type. And it's usually one that whatever your type is. So this is another way you can know your type. Whichever type you don't want to be, that's probably your type. So when you're reading about it, you're like, that's definitely not me. That's definitely you. That's a real easy way. Just shortcut it. And usually it's a pretty emotional experience once you really accept the fact that you are who you are, right? But there's a path back, a path of growth that you can start to go down to help heal this part of you. So for example, for the Enneagram 7, Enneagram 7s avoid pain. That's the core motivation. And so the growth path for the Enneagram 7 is to sit with pain. Sounds horrible.
It sounds fun. That's just...
And see, for the 5, it's like, let's do this.
How's that working out for you?
It's horrible. It's the worst thing ever. But it helps to, that's the piece of learning how to understand the box you're in and then understand how to step outside of the box. So there's this really great quote by Viktor Frankl, and he wrote The Man's Search for Meaning. And it says, I'm not going to quote it exactly right, but it basically says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space lies our greatest opportunity for growth. And what he means by that is whenever we are just constantly responding and we don't understand why we're responding the way that we're responding, we don't know how to change. We don't know how to do it differently. We don't know how to interact differently. But then if we can learn to take that beat, to live in that space, then we can choose a different response and we can do something different. And so for an Enneagram 7, my choice is, am I going to numb this pain out by, going on a roller coaster? Or am I going to decide to sit with it, allow the pain to happen, like live in my feelings, let my emotions run through me and deal with it? And when I do, then I become a whole person, right? I become a more whole version of myself.
I really like that quote. How can people learn more, or how can people kind of start to discover this stuff?
Great question. So I have a typing guide that I would love to share with you guys, and it's different than any other type of, like, it's not a test, it's a journaling guide. So it takes you on like a journaling experience, and you can go through and do this journaling, and it helps guide you towards what your number is. So I would love to share that with anybody listening. I think you guys will put it in the show notes. And then I would encourage you, I kind of have this is my like little unconventional way of getting your type, if you guys want to hear it. So I love to tell people, if they feel like they have to take a test, then like go take a test. And the best test is the Ready test. It's like $12. Take
Ready,
that test.
Spelled weird.
Yeah. RHETI. So Russ and Hudson are the 2 leading Enneagram thought leaders. Sorry, Riso Hudson. I totally said that wrong, you guys. Cut that part out. And so they run the Enneagram Institute, or did. And so that's their test. So you can take that test. And then after you take the test, then go to the road back to you, read through those opening statements of each type and see which one from your top 3 types from the Ready test, see which ones you identify with the most. And then there's an amazing podcast called Sleeping at Last. Okay. And Sleeping at Last, and it's a guy who created a song for each Enneagram type. And he plays the song, but then if you listen to his podcast, he goes into Chris Hewerts, who wrote The Sacred Enneagram and the Enneagram of Belonging, comes on, and he describes each type in like the most beautiful way that you've ever heard each type described. And he describes each type, and then they describe how the song was made. And so each song only has instrumental music and sounds and everything from the types that are that song. So like if it's the type 7 song, it's like instruments played by type 7s, for example. It's really amazing, really well done, and it's beautiful descriptions of each type. So that's like my unconventional way of figuring out what your type is, and it's really fun as well in true 7 fashion.
Yeah.
So that would be my recommendation. And I also have a course, if anybody wants to go even deeper, that is like a introduction to the Enneagram. And we do an introduction to the Enneagram, and then we do each center. So if you guys are interested in that, I can also offer that course as well.
Does the course take is a certain amount of time, or it's how's it work?
It's modules. So it's 4 modules, and they're each like an hour and a half long.
Cool.
I took the Ready thing kind of in preparation for this, because I wanted to know it. And it said I'm a 7, but I'm not sure I'm a 7.
Yeah.
Now that I'm thinking about it, I think I used to be a 7. I don't know if that.
It used to be fun, and now you're not. You're not as fun.
Yeah.
It is.
I used to be.
Yeah.
I used to feel more fun.
I do think that first dive in is a little tricky to figure out because we're so used to thinking of our outward part of ourselves, our shells that interact with the world. That's how it was like, oh, Steve's the fun guy that, likes diving into the next new thing. Like we know the outside, but it's very hard for anyone but you to really know, like, why is Steve like Steve,
Well, and I think that's the problem with the tests with any of this stuff. Like you were saying, Krista, is that you go into the test, you're like, I would like to be that.
Yeah.
And so you choose that. And but it helps a lot to know that this is more about the motivations, like why are you doing what you're doing? And it's not like, here's your number and read a book about you and, have a good day.
Right.
There's more to it. And it seems like that's a big difference between this and other personality stuff. It's not, here's who you are. It's here's why you do what you do and how you can improve yourself. I like that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would just say, like, take your top 3 numbers from the ready and just start to explore those numbers, because we also didn't even talk about wings, and each number has a wing on each side of it. So like a 7, I have a 6 wing and an 8 wing. And so sometimes there's pieces of those wings that can show up too, that can kind of move you in a direction or not. And then there's all kinds of, layers to this. So I would say start exploring those top 3 numbers and reading about those and just kind of see where it takes you. But, commit to the curiosity and then just allow the journey to happen, because it's a really fun journey to get to go down. And once you start to read about it, you'll probably, want to figure out Christy's number, and you guys will start talking about it. And, even Chris said earlier, my husband, Chris, he doesn't even fully know what his number is. And I'm like super into all of this. And I don't fully know what his number is either. I
was going to ask. I was like, what is he? We won't tell him. If you...
Don't tell him, except for he's going to listen to the podcast. So
yeah, we won't tell the Institute that you've totally typed him. You've got him figured out.
Well, I did for a while. And then he started to exhibit some characteristics of a different type. And so then I was like, oh, you're definitely this type. And then as I explored that type more, I kind of went back to the other type. And so we still kind of go back and forth between these 2 types with him. And he hasn't fully settled on one because he doesn't really totally know yet what his motivation is. So it's been an interesting path of exploration for him as well, to see, his different personality quirks and all kinds of stuff, to kind of see what comes up for him. So it's pretty fun once it's inner work, so it's hard, but it's fun hard. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's worth it hard.
Worth it hard. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Absolutely worth it. Change your life worth it.
Yeah, honestly, for me, I do think that just starting to see those things, I think for me, typing myself, what helped the most was reading about like the lies I tell myself. And that's what you were talking about, the stimulus and the response. I was always having the same response in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Right? Because, one of the things a 5 will do is think that they're out of energy because the world is sucking it out of me.
Yeah.
And so they'll be like, oh, I have to retreat just a little bit away from the world so I'll have more energy. But then you have less energy. So you're like, oh, I guess I better retreat a little bit more. And then I'd have less energy. So I'd be like, oh, I guess I'll retreat a little bit more. And it turns out my scary answer, yours was to sit in the pain, which is the terror for a 7, and mine was engage with life and you won't die. And I was like, yes, I will, though, if I do. So it's so helpful for me. And, that we didn't talk about a lot of the other numbers, but they all have this really helpful direction for how you can respond to those stresses in a different way and how you can understand people in a different way. So really cool stuff.
Yeah. And even just having a level of awareness. Well, there's two pieces to it, right? The level of awareness is really huge because once you become aware of things, that's when you can start to change them. And so having that awareness, you don't even necessarily need the next steps to know that like, oh, I have this awareness now. And then you're probably going to know what you need to do next. Oh, I need to do this thing. And so for me, having that level of awareness is really like the most important thing. And then the other thing that I think is really powerful about this and about the Enneagram is I think a lot of healing, maybe all healing, comes from people being truly seen. And I think there's not a lot of that in this world, is that we don't really see people. And whenever you are able to be seen for who you really are, there's a lot of healing in that. And so being able to get to a place where you're vulnerable enough to say, this is who I am. Will you see me? And then have other people say, yes, I see you. It can be the most powerful thing of your life, besides Jesus, obviously.
What number is Jesus?
Yeah, what number is Jesus?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. That's probably like a controversial thing if I were to say that, huh?
All of them at once.
What number I think Jesus
I think it's
is.
it's a good Rorschach test to ask people because I'll be like, he's whatever I am. He's one of those.
Definitely a 5.
Yeah. Or he's 1 through 9. He's in the center of the center.
Well, so
How about
9 is the peacemaker, and they do say that 9s. Well, there's a theory that 9 is like the culmination of all the numbers. And so like the 9 is like the unity and the peacemaker and the like bringing of everything together. And the 9, one of the biggest pains of the 9 is when humanity is not unified. And so there is something to be said about possibility of Jesus being a 9, right? Because, his biggest pain was that. So,
wow.
But he's got to be a pretty integrated guy to go into the temple and talk to the Pharisees like that as a 9, I don't know.
9s have an 8 wing,
Okay,
8 is like
okay. So he's a 9.
Well,
9 with an 8
9s
wing.
are in the anger triad. They're in the gut triad. And so they get really, if you push 9s to a certain point, they get really in touch with their anger. So
start flipping tables.
Yeah. I mean, really, they will not be controlled. So
we figured it out.
God is a 9.
So you're welcome, 9s.
I feel like God, the one I grew up with, is a 1, but maybe anyways.
So Krista, before we close out, can you tell people where to find stuff about you and how to connect with you?
Yeah, sure. Probably the best place is on Instagram. My Instagram is Krista Lauren, which is my middle name. So KristaLoryn. So if you message me over there, I will send you my guide and help you with anything else Enneagram related.
Sweet.
I'm excited to dive into that guide. It's been a while since I've done Enneagram stuff. Been like, I don't know, 5, 6 years, 3 years. So I'm excited to do that.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get that book.
So maybe after we can just have like another podcast and you guys can tell me all the things you've discovered about yourself after you've done these things.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea, actually.
That sounds really fun to me.
I would love it.
Cool. Well, thanks so much, Krista, for being on here.
Yeah.
And we'll hopefully maybe we'll talk to you later about this again.
Yeah, I hope so. That would be awesome.
Yeah, we'll have bets going on what Steve is, and then we can we can see who wins when we come together.
Perfect. I love it.
Thanks, Krista.
Thank you guys.
See you later.
And I had been screaming all these messages I thought you wanted to hear, but it only takes a whisper.
Hey, thanks for listening to Following the Fire. If you'd like to see show notes for this episode, which includes links to everything we mentioned as well as all the scriptures, head on over to followingthefire.com and just click on this episode. There's also contact information on the website. Let us know what you think about the show and if you have any suggestions for future topics. Also, please give us a review on Apple Podcasts if you could. It really helps other folks find the show. And as always, thanks to the fabulous Daniel Wheat for the theme song and the music for the episode. You can find more of his stuff on Apple Music and Spotify. See you later.